I think he needs a moment to himself. Sonic World DX is a fan game that I honestly don't see much discussion about when it comes to the Sonic fan game space. Don't get me wrong, recently we've seen some incredible stuff, but what kinda stands out about Sonic World DX is that it's trying to blend the style of the mostly adventure era games, such as Adventure 1 and 2, but also Heroes and to some extent 06 as well, or at least what that game was trying to be. It also decides to pull from some other games, but I'll talk about those when they come up. I initially didn't think I would cover this game since I come back to the game every once in a while, but recently I've been playing it a lot, and it was more so just, hey, I want to cover this game in a video, so that's where we're at now. So I want to talk about the game from my own experience and maybe give it a little more attention. I'll be covering just about everything, from what I like about it and think it does really well, to stuff I don't particularly like, as well as giving some constructive criticism and ideas on how to tweak things. That way I don't sound like I'm giving the game a hard time without coming up with some solutions to improve it. I also feel like some context is also in order from where I'm coming from. I've actually been following this game for quite a while, since before it was called DX actually. I've been playing since they put out Release 7. I remember my little child brain getting excited over the fact that special stages would come in Release 8 amongst other things. I loved playing those legacy characters that just aren't here in DX, but I'll get to that a bit later. Okay, no holding back, let's just get started with jumping into the good. The game overall feels really good to play. It's honestly on the same level, if not a little better, than Adventure 1 and 2. I'm gonna say the thing, you ready? The game handles really well, and there's a surprising amount of momentum behind your actions. If you roll down a hill, you will gain some incredible speeds. There's plenty of stages that have these long hills that you can just tap the spin dash and you'll just be flying fast. That is until you either have to turn, smack into a wall, or uncurl out of your roll. Or even if you were playing the older releases, you could reach top speeds where you would just be able to clip through springs as if they weren't even there. The animations and models of the playable cast have gotten a massive overhaul and improvement within DX, and it's amazing. I cannot commend enough just how much of an overhaul this is. The animations are way smoother and fluent, allowing actions to flow into each other very well, and some animations even having adopted some squash and stretch to various degrees. Some small nitpicks here, but Omega has a noticeable amount of squash and stretch within his jumping animation, and I feel like it's a little much given how he's a massive hunking robot. Metal Sonic has some too on his top speed animation, but it's much more subtle and really conveys how fast his jet engine must be to propel him at the speeds needed to keep up with Sonic. Only other thing I can really say is that I don't particularly like the drifting animations that some characters have. This is absolutely a biased thing, but I've always liked Generations' drift animation where Sonic would be in a ball for the drift, using his entire body mass to lean into the turn, over other games' version of the drift where he just has his arm out on the ground needing to help him lean and balance into the turn. The ball drift also makes more sense as well given how the drift can damage enemies. Maybe in the future we could see some options when it comes to little things like this. While on drifting as well, Shadow's drift and by extension Shadow Android's drift are a little finicky when rapidly turning left to right. Not a major issue, but it is rather humorous to watch them flounder around on the ground. Menu and GUI themes are a really neat idea and can really spice up how you perceive the game. For the longest time, because of my history with the game, I've mainly used the Legacy theme, but since coming back to the game for this video, I've been trying to find a new theme to stick with. That's why if you see the UI change from clip to clip, it's because I'm trying out different themes. Ultimately, I stick with the default one that DX has to offer, but I've thought about trying my hand at maybe making my own. Whether that theme is based on the channel or just even a hodgepodge of elements from already made themes that I personally like, I don't know. That actually leads to my next point rather cleanly. Sonic World DX has been around for a bit, but hasn't stopped the devs from making the game intentionally moddable. Whether that's what I mentioned before about custom GUI themes or more interesting stuff such as custom stages and playable characters. I didn't dive too much into the modding scene back in the day, but I was aware of it. Though I did take a peek into it for this particular video and did stumble across some neat stuff. Seeing that some people have made Tangle and Whisper playable is really cool given how the IDW comic series is canon, and even more recently, Tangle is actually name dropped in Frontiers as well. I kinda hope we get the chance to see these two, as well as other IDW characters, become playable not just in this, but also in a mainline game someday. Oh, and I also did grab a Bowser mod. He's rather big and mostly a little ridiculous to watch the Koopa King run through loops at speeds his little stubs probably shouldn't let him move at, but I digress. There's a lot the modding scene has to offer, and I didn't even show a snippet of what it has going on. It's honestly impressive, and I really like how there's even an included modded character with downloading DX being Classic Sonic. Classic handles differently from Sonic as one is to expect, but Classic also comes with quite a few costumes as well, which is really cool to see. That also leads me to my next thing that I like. There are unlockable costumes for a good majority of characters. Some of them are what you'd expect, Sonic with his Adventure 2 kicks, Gamma having palette swaps for the other E100 series robots, everyone who appeared in Sonic Riders having their getup from those games, etc. But then there are some original costumes as well, such as Shadow wearing a full gun body armor set, which kinda reminds me of Armored Mewtwo. There's a costume for Espio, where he's a shark rather than a chameleon. A bit odd, but it's neat. Tails has his OVA getup with the watch and pilot hat and goggles. That's sick. Kinda weird that Knuckles doesn't have his hat, but I can't imagine that's too far away. Ray has a costume that gives him Sally Acorn's vest and boots from her latter Archie appearances. A really nice throwback to that character, and it makes sense given how both Sally and Ray are squirrels. All of these are unlocked by doing in-game challenges. Some of them require you to do a specific thing, like grind the rail for 30 seconds or complete a certain act of a stage as that character. Before I continue, I'm about to get a little annoyed. One of the challenges to unlock a costume for Sonic is to complete a collectathon mission. The game doesn't tell you what counts to this. Ring collection on a stage? No. Flicky collection on a stage? Nope. Do a treasure hunting stage as Sonic? A little odd, but surely that's gotta count. Nuh-uh. Destroy every enemy on a stage? Omega has a costume that is the inverse of that, but nope. It's not that one either. Turns out it's only obtained by doing the Island Mission Collectathon. Now, sure, it does say mission and not act or stage, but like, come on, man. Collectathon is the main takeaway, and since there's already Collectathon-like things in the stages, why wouldn't any of those count? At least the reward was worth it in the end. Tunic Sonic, I feel like, is never remembered purely because no one bought a Wii U. The island is really cool, on paper. In reality, it's got a long way to go in my opinion. I don't know what it is about the island, but it looks super unfinished. Like, it was rushed out the door to meet an update's release date. It's not bad though, there's some secrets dotted around the hub world area. I should probably explain what the island is before going further with it, huh? Well, the island is a hub world where you can explore around, talk to NPCs, do missions, and even play some really old levels from around release 2. You can even do the sound test here as well as explore the museum's exterior. Can't go into it though, as it's not finished yet. There are a few references scattered about, like these four, not Steven, and this kid who looks like he's ready to drop a slur. Oh, and I guess that's why you're not playable anymore. You're just floating about, aren't you? I'm gonna get back to what I just said in a moment, as I want to stay on track with the island. As I mentioned, there's missions you can do by picking up Mom's credit cards scattered across the map and bringing them to Jewel here at the little booth. These missions are entirely unique and can only be played here. They don't appear on the stage select screen, even though I think it would be neat if they did after you finish the mission for that stage for the first time, but I digress. These can range from a few things, such as collecting a bunch of Sonic 1 cartridges to throw into a landfill somewhere, to taking on boss fights and rival battles. They're fun and spice things up. Lastly, there's a shop on the island as well, where you can spend rings you get from finishing stages and completing challenges to spend on a few things, such as additional abilities and skills that once bought can be toggled on or off depending on your own playstyle. There's some really cool ones, like I love seeing the drop dash here. That's something that I've always enjoyed ever since Mania introduced it. Though something I gotta point out because of how out of place it is. Like, okay, this is primarily an adventure style game, so then why include the boost as a purchasable skill, but also have its price be a meme? Like, I don't doubt the boost likely breaks the game, but I honestly don't know because I didn't get enough rings to buy it. But like, this feels like a shitpost, honestly. Anyways, so that's pretty much it for the island for now. If you come back here after collecting 25 red rings found within the main stages, you'll unlock the city portion of the island. It's kinda just more of the same of the island, but more missions and a legacy stage are here. A few more NPCs too, such as the gun commander and the president? Okay, that's an assassination attempt waiting to happen, but hey, he looks chill. There's this kid here named Know-It-All. I find him kinda redundant, but he tells you about the abilities of the character you're playing as. Oh, and they brought back the shop owner from 06. If you talk with him, firstly, his shop is no different than the shop that Vanilla runs, but then going through his shop, your character will spam their idle voice lines. Then also, if you speak with any other NPCs in the city after talking to him, the camera will jump cut back to him as if you were chatting with him and not the character you just approached. Last thing I'll mention with the island is that there's a bridge that links up the city to the island, and it's kinda neat. You can actually grind on the sides of it like it's a radical highway, but the grind rail hitboxes, certainly a thing. This is kind of what I mean about it feeling a little unfinished. What's here is cool and has potential, but right now it's kind of jank. Enjoyable jank, but it's still jank. They have made a post saying something along the lines of we're looking into the idea of modded hub worlds, which could be kinda neat to see, and it just fits with how moddable the game already is. Speaking of jank, I'm going to talk about controls now. You may have noticed that with all the footage that I've shown so far, I've included a controller overlay that shows my inputs and everything. That's because while the game feels great to play, it says it right as you start the game and are waiting for the title screen to load up. The game is more focused on playing with either keyboard or keyboard and mouse. While controllers are supported, it's not the intended way to play. They have admitted in a few posts that controller is hard to develop for on the engine, so I get why, but I'm me. I like playing Sonic games with a controller over keyboard and mouse every chance I get the option between. Sonic is all about movement, so having an analog stick for that is the best way to go about it in my opinion. Now, when they say that controllers are supported but not preferred, and that it's hard to program for, I believe it. This is jank, but I still enjoy it. There have been times when inputs for me have just not registered. Sometimes inputs work and other times they just don't. You best hope that they work when you pick something up because there's a decent chance that they'll break on you, and whatever you're holding will be stuck in your hands because you're just unable to drop it. The UI will sometimes freak out trying to figure out if you're using a controller or not. This point is a nitpick, but it's likely only a me thing, I think, but I want to point this out. Most characters have a stomp ability, and that's always been there, even before the game became DX. Being able to stomp was part of the majority of the movesets. DX came out and added in the bounce as well as the stomp. They are both bound to the same button and are activated depending on how you press the button. If you tap it, then you stomp, and if you hold it, you bounce. Here's the thing. I wish there was an option somewhere for me to be able to switch this around because of how sensitive the game is with what's considered a tap compared to a hold. I tend to bounce when I want to stomp way more often than not. Older releases didn't have this issue because it was just a stomp. It didn't matter how long you pressed the button for, you would always stomp. The bounce I don't even really see much value in since the bounce in the main series is always given extra height when used, almost like it's Sonic's version of a high jump. In this, it barely feels like it's better than a jump at all. Also, it usually appeared to be one or the other in the games, with the bounce often getting the ability to break things below it like the stomp would. I don't mind having them both, but I'd love the option to either switch them around for their inputs or tweak the amount of time for a press to be considered a hold. Two more things I'll cover with controls and then I'll wrap up with stages and characters. Rail grinding on a controller is fine. I don't have any issues with the mechanic itself, more so the camera. In older releases, the camera would just follow you as you would grind on the rail that has a turn. Now in DX it doesn't, and I don't know why there's a change. If you try to track the camera manually and want to grind fast, then you gotta do a claw kind of grip to do so. This is another thing I'd love to see an option for somewhere. Lastly, for controls, I want to mention the Mach Speed controls on a controller. Now, you heard me right, Mach Speed stages, and they're honestly a lot of fun, but man, until you learn how to play them, they are super janky and a little frustrating. I don't really know how the team would tackle these points I'm about to make, but I'm still going to point these out. Firstly, turning for Mach Speed feels almost comparable to how cyberspace stages and frontiers are when you're at top speed. This may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's not easy to pick up initially. Good luck if you end up taking a spring or get hit in the air, because the only thing you'll be turning in those instances is the camera, which was way worse in older releases, honestly. The level design for one of the Mach Speed stages has been stated to be one of the hardest levels in the game, and it's no surprise that not only is it an original stage, it's also literally named Worst Cave. That being said, let's finally dive into stages. Overall, they're pretty fun. There's a few original stages included, but a majority of the stages are mostly new takes on existing stages throughout the series. Each stage has a number of acts to it that have different objectives, so the first act will always be the intended route to get from the start to the finish in reasonable time with a decent amount of rings collected and enemies defeated. I'll talk more about the ranking system in a second. The additional acts will then be different objectives such as treasure hunting stage like Adventure 1 and 2, defeat all enemies, collect a set amount of rings, or even a time trial. Each Act 1 of a stage will contain red rings, and collecting all of them for that stage will unlock that level's Encore Act, which is a huge mix-up from how that stage is played. Sometimes it can be entirely new stages too. So for example, Crisis City's Encore Act is a flooded, ruined city meant to mimic Station Square, like you're playing through the stage when Perfect Chaos is wreaking havoc. Sonic 06's Kingdom Valley is included, and its Encore Act is the section of Kingdom Valley during the end of the world. Completing stages and getting S ranks will earn you emblems, and after a certain amount of emblems collected, you'll unlock a few things. Every 5 emblems earns you a unlock token that can be used to unlock a character to play as. And then after an amount that I honestly don't remember, you'll also unlock Chaos Emeralds. Once again, I'm going to get back to the emeralds as I have a whole page in the script dedicated to them. Overall, I really enjoy the stages, and the only negatives I can give are mostly nitpicks. I don't like some of the tweaks made to some of the stages when the game turned into DX, such as Green Hill's fastest route now kinda blocked off unless you have a flying character. It's still possible to get a good time without taking the route, but you were able to easily get to it in a previous version by taking the homing attack route. All they've done is just move where the homing route takes you now. Also, Green Hill is weird for running on water. I don't know what it is, but I find I seem to always drop below the surface even though I'm going at a decent speed with speed shoes. I've already mentioned the Mach Speed stuff, but there's a few Mach Speed stages. They're good, they could already control better than how 06 did, which isn't that high of a bar to get over, but their biggest flaw in my opinion are the controls when using a controller. Worst Cave is almost unplayable with a controller, but I think Worst Cave's biggest issue is something that plagues the game overall. For some reason, if you restart in a stage too much or die in a stage too much, the game chugs. It's more common with stages that have a lot going on, like Worst Cave, but unless you're trying to either do a stage without dying for that perfect bonus, or you're having a really hard time with a stage, you'll never notice it. Other nitpicks are just that I find larger enemies take too long to take down as non-power characters. I think projectiles fired from enemies should despawn after the enemy that fired it is defeated, since I find it leading to some cheap hits. And then I think some enemy placement can also be cheap. Oh, and then there's also that one part in Crisis City where after you get done with an automated section, you often just slam into a wall. It's weird because the previous releases of the game had this exact section and the automation carried you past this momentum killer. Okay, quick on the ranking system and then I'll tackle those damn emeralds. Initially, I didn't like DX's ranking system as I found it kinda sweaty, but it's more just finding better routes and making sure you got enough rings with you to handle it. You can get a decent rank without needing the perfect bonus, but some of the S rank score requirements I find are a little too high for their stages. It's the classic thinking you did well and then get slapped in the face with a C or B. Still better than Legacy since those were way too easy, but I feel like some of them require some tweaking. A last note on it though is that it is really satisfying when you absolutely crush the S requirement, but that's usually a given with a good ranking system and this one is almost there. Okay, Chaos Emeralds. When Release 8 dropped, collecting the emeralds was a little frustrating but not impossible. Honestly, just as satisfying as some of the mainline games. In the older releases, specifically 8 and 9, you could play the special stages. These were kinda neat, and going back to them for this video made me appreciate them much more. Using the Mach Speed section controls, the special stages are kind of an endless runner where you need to collect a set amount of rings to unlock the emeralds. I'd compare it to Sonic 2's half pipe, except it's not a half pipe at all. With each stage, the next one would unlock and they would get more difficult, adding in obstacles and tightening the ring amount so the needed amount is less, but is still challenging as you have to balance between avoiding obstacles and actually collecting the rings. Thing is though, why I'm not comparing them to the half pipe is because with the half pipe, it didn't matter how many times you messed up on a stage, you could memorize it and be a little better at it on your next retry of that stage. With these special stages, they are entirely randomly generated as you go through them. I have mixed feelings on this, as on one hand, it keeps you on your toes and can keep things interesting, while on the other hand, it can lead to some kind of unfair stuff happening. One run, you could have more than enough rings but then get a bad combination of obstacles causing you to restart, or in the worst case, you don't get enough rings at all and just fail at no real fault of your own. What I just mentioned is really rare to happen though, and like I said, it's basically a worst case scenario. Either way, as I mentioned, DX makes it so that you get the emeralds by collecting a certain amount of emblems per emerald. Something must have been bugged with my save, as it says I only have 1, but I should have around 3, I think. Nonetheless, DX doesn't have the special stages, and I'm hoping they don't change it too much if they are brought back as of right now. I do miss them, and that's kinda why I'm not talking about super forms, which actually brings me nicely to the final part of this video. Yes, I did indeed choose to talk about characters themselves to the very end of this video. Best for last, I suppose. You start off the game with 5 characters, being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Cream, with the other 14 locked. Well, 5 characters unless you go into debug mode and use the Unlock All cheat. I mentioned earlier, in order to unlock characters is with unlock tokens. These are given out once per 5 emblems that you collect, or if you don't want to grind emblems, unlock tokens are available to buy from the shop on the island. There are 2 characters that you can't use these tokens on to unlock, but I'll get to them in a moment. While each of them have their own skills and abilities that they have at their disposal, overall they all feel pretty nice to play. Even at some crazy speeds, they're all still able to be easily controlled. This isn't like the boost games where you are uncontrollable at high speeds. Again, it's more like the adventure era. Honestly, I'm really happy with the skills the characters have. In previous releases, it seemed like a lot of skills were either unnecessary or too situational to be properly used, and so a lot of them I just didn't use. Speaking of changes between older and newer releases, everyone here is unique. Despite having a noticeably smaller roster than previous versions, it was pretty clear that a lot of the characters back then were just borrowing skills from an assortment of other characters. Like, Chaos Zero just glides exactly like Knuckles. I didn't know water was capable of doing such a thing. Though that being said, flying characters got my favorite change of the bunch. Before, if you were playing as a flying character like Tails or Cream, you would have to mash your jump button to gain height. Not only was that kind of unnecessary, but it also made the characters look a little jittery while flying. Now it's just as simple as pressing down the button to automatically gain height and releasing to descend. Undoubtedly a good change. DX does indeed feel like it's going for more of a quality over quantity this time round, and it's purely because of the more refined and polished roster that's here. Honestly, aside from some odd exclusions for the current build, such as the other 2/3 of Team Chaotix, and this floating dumbass, I'm really happy with who's here, and I can't wait for more to come if they're really trying to make everyone stand out. I only have a few minor things that I kinda don't like. The aforementioned stomp bounce conundrum that characters which have both is one for a start. Teams and pairs are awesome and are really cool features, as you can pair up or make a trio that you can play as and freely switch between each character. With how unique they all are, you can do some awesome stuff, unlike Heroes where they're all basically skins of Team Sonic. My only real issue is that unlike Heroes, whoever you choose to bring along with you are basically mindless. They will not engage with the environment at all and have no AI to them. They are just here for looks and are able to be freely switched to them. Getting back to the 2 characters you can't unlock with tokens, we have the Shadow Android as well as the Egg Robo. Shadow Android is unlocked by beating the crap out of it in a boss fight that you can only access after unlocking a member of Team Dark, as well as having found 25 red rings to get to the city portion of the island. It's not the best, as you do have to do the fight without rings, but once it's done, it's done. I haven't dived too much into characters specifically, but I will for Edgy Mobile over here. Android's default appearance, to make sure he stands out over the original, is that of the Player 2 Shadow that was in the Shadows game. Actually, that's the best way I can describe Android. If you liked Shadow the Hedgehog, then this Robo Devil is basically a playstyle that tries to mimic that game. Android's action gauge, upon being filled up to different levels, allows him to pull out guns and just go nuts. He's got a mid-air attack where he pulls out an Egg Pawn's gun and fires it. Even the costumes and end-of-level pose are all pulled from Shadow 05. And then there's the Egg Robo. I don't actually have any footage of the bot because of his unlock requirement. In order to unlock the Egg Robo, you have to do the challenge mission for Worst Cave. That challenge? Remember how I said Worst Cave is the hardest level and even more so on a controller because the controls are against you? You have to finish Worst Cave deathless in order to unlock the Egg Robo. Okay, future me bumping in here to say I'm wrong, actually. It's not finish the stage without dying. although I'm still up for that challenge because that sounds like a lot of fun. It's actually a island mission, but in order for it to actually be unlocked, you have to S rank all the acts of Worst Cave, which is also an interesting challenge. I'm up for it, but like, I'm just pointing out that I'm wrong here. I didn't realize that's what it was, so. As of right now, no thank you. But what I will promise is that I will continue to grind this out. I don't know how long this will take, but I want to be able to unlock everything legit, and I wanted to get this done on a controller. When I beat this, when I unlock the egg robo, I will post a video of the run where I do it, and post it on the channel with no context other than I did it. I don't care how long this takes, but this is a challenge I'm committed to. I'll probably do it as Metal Sonic because the extra jump he has, but I don't see myself doing it with anyone else. Lastly, there's also a Chow Garden. I don't mess with these myself, but if you like Adventure 2's Chow Garden, then you'll be happy with this too, as I think it has all the same features. And that's it. That's my thoughts on Sonic World DX. While I could have gone a little deeper with some stuff, such as how Blaze technically has the boost ability before you purchase it from the shop, or how I kinda wish there were mods of the Legacy levels like how there are for the Legacy characters, I'm happy with what I've covered. And hopefully you are too. This is the first time I'm really doing scripted content, but I've always wanted to do it, and given how much a larger video project has been in the works for a long time now, I'd figured I'd give that project a break and focus on something that has gotten my attention a lot more as of late. I don't know when my next video will be, probably around late August, as I've got some traveling coming up, and I won't be able to work on videos, but I do know what I will be covering, and I hope you are all looking forward to that. Thanks so much if you made it this far into the video. If you like this sort of thing, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all on the flop side.